The next morning when Fantasy woke up, she was still in her mad and emotional mood from last night from her argument with her father. From the argument with her father. She then went to her dresser about to put on her combat uniform in order to get ready for her next mission, when she found a note on her dresser from her dad. She picked up the note and began to read it. Dear Fantasy, I'm very sorry for last night, for all our argument we had with each other. I know that you're still mad and upset with me, but I want to make it up to you, who, with a surprise. I don't have any mission for you since I thought I would let you take the day off and go outside and enjoy the nature to clear your mind off of last night. Just make sure to be back home before 5:30 p.m. Have a good day, and Dad still loves you. After reading the note and setting it back down on the dresser, Fantasy then said rudely, replying back to it as she went to go get dressed to go for her long walk in her dress. Well, depends whatever. She then got on her dress. She took her phone and earbuds with her and left the base until it was time to come back home. Fantasy also made sure to stay out of sight just in case anyone noticed her while she's on her walk, as her dad always reminded her to be careful in case anyone tries to fight or go after her in any way. As time passed on, now from the morning to the evening of walking around all day, Fantasy is heading back to the base, and she's close to home as it's 5:25 p.m. on her phone. When Fantasy re-entered the base, Eggman saw her and stopped her in her tracks by calling for her. Fantasy, do you have a moment? I have a very special surprise for you. Fantasy then closed her eyes and took a deep breath in and out before turning to talk to her father, as she is still a little mad and upset with him. Yes? What is it, Dad? She said in a calm voice. Doctor... That is for you to find out, my beloved daughter. Come and follow me to the lab, he said in a happy and hopeful voice. Fantasy then followed Dr. Eggman to his lab for the special surprise he has for her. As they walked down each hall, from corridor to corridor, they finally reached the lab. But it was a different kind of lab. It was the cryogenic lab. Fantasy then got a surprised and confused look on her face as the both walked into the lab. She then began to ask her father, Dad, I thought you didn't want to put me in a cryogenic sleep for the next 10 or 11 years. I did, but I changed my mind since I also realized something, Eggman said as both stopped in front of the cryogenic tube that's hooked up to a computer. I realized that I never had a good childhood growing up since my dad always didn't support me in my dreams. And he always looked at me as a failure in life. Fantasy then felt bad for her father as she heard from what Eggman just told her. Dad, I'm so sorry that happened to you, she said as she began to cry a little for her father. Eggman then got out a napkin that he was saving for her later for himself when he puts Fantasy in cryogenic sleep for the next 10 to 11 years, but instead he used it to wipe away his daughter's tears that are falling down on her face. Don't feel bad, dear. He wasn't a great father at all to me, ever since your grandma passed away. Eggman then got on one knee and gave Fantasy one last big hug goodbye, before letting her in the crowd tube while holding back tears. Fantasy also gave a big hug back to her father before heading to cryogenic tube for her long slumber. She said one last thing to her father as she is crying. I love you, Dad. I love you too, my beloved daughter. They both then stopped hugging each other as Fantasy began to step into the cryogenic tube from the entrance of the machine, leaning against the machine, soft patting with her back, and closing her eyes as she wiped her tears before closing as the machine door with the glass on it in front of her closes. Eggman then went to his console to begin the cryogenic freeze sleep until it was fully completed, as the cryogenic tube is set for 11 years for her to wake up. He then initiated a protocol to brainwash her from remembering the past 2 years of working for Dr. Eggman, that then began to make her lose her memories of working for Dr. Eggman and everything else about him. Eggman then began to shed tears as his father is his daughter is now gonna be sent to another location near when her time from being in the cryogenic sleep is up. He's gonna miss her a lot due to the bond that they have together, but he will remember that his daughter loves him, and that he'll remember that he loves his daughter, and that his daughter loves him too. Orbot then entered the room to check on both Eggman and Fantasy. He noticed that Eggman was crying from putting Fantasy in the cryogenic sleep, and then asked Eggman in a concerned and worried voice, "Doctor, is everything okay?" Eggman then snapped out of it and turned to Orbot to tell him, "Yes, Orbot, everything is okay. Now, shall we continue our projects to stop Sonic and his friends?" "Affirmative, Doctor," Orbot says, as both Eggman and Orbot walked out of the cryogenic lab and off to stop Sonic and his friends. 11 years had passed, and as usual, Eggman then got defeated by Sonic and his friends as usual, but this time from his own darling daughter, Fantasy, and her adult version boyfriend, Tails. That is like 18, 19 now, so. 19, so yeah. After both adult Tails and Fantasy defeated Death Egg Robot from Dr. Eggman, piloting it and it being destroyed from both of them in Green Hill Zone in the forest, Fantasy then jumped on one of the debris of the Death Egg Robot and then said to Eggman, "Take that, Dr. Egg Loser! Take that!" Yeah, let me try it again. "Take that, Dr. Egg Loser!" she said in a relieved and cheery voice as her boyfriend, Adult Tails, then flew up to her and they both shared a romantic kiss. Adult Tails then romantically asked Fantasy, "Ready for that date under the stars and moon later on tonight, babe?" Fantasy then giggled and also said in a romantic voice back to her boyfriend, "You know it, babe." They both then ran off in the opposite direction together in order to get ready for their date night together. Eggman then sat back up and got angry and irritated at both of them. But Eggman always reminded himself about how much he's proud of his daughter and that he still supports her no matter what, as long as it's not anything extremely bad, disturbing, and all.